15, 16. I'm not sure things were copacetic with Leslie Frazier either. He just kind of disappeared. I think that was a mutual behind the scenes thing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And look at John Harbaugh. What a jerk. Second day there, he fires a guy who's been working for the Giants for 23 years. What's that all about? Talk about, reminds me of that Bible story where the guy got forgiven of his debt and then he goes out and chokes the guy who owed him a couple of bucks. I could go that way with it, but I probably won't. Testing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, yeah. You just give me the lights up and I'll jump in. Good morning, everyone. Certainly glad you could take a little bit of time out this Sunday morning to spend with us, and hopefully you'll enjoy this and you're going to find it pretty on spot with what everybody in Western New York's been going through this past week. What a crazy ride, right, as Bills fans. So I can't ignore that. I feel like we got to go there. We got to talk about it. It's more than the big elephant in the room. I don't think it's something we're all jumping in on in opinions. And so the title of this message that I came up with is Sometimes Change is Good. Sometimes change is good. The question is going to be for you and me, are we going to resist change or are we going to embrace change? Because I'll tell you, that's really going to determine how we move forward in the future. And so as you know and I know, we watched a heartbreak loss to the Broncos. And, some facts are out there. One fact is that it was a catch. I don't care who thinks it wasn't. They're wrong, and it's okay to be wrong. But, we got robbed. No question about it. At the same time, I'm not sure we played that great, right? We could have played a much better game. Josh had a lot of turnovers. Could have put us in a different spot. And, we wouldn't have had to come down to a contested catch at the end of the game. But at the end of the day, that was a catch. Would have been a field goal. Game over. But here we are. The real shocker, though, to me, and I'm assuming everybody else, was finding out, the next day or 2 days later, I don't even know what it was, that Sean McDermott got fired. Got fired. And if you're anything like me, I was flabbergasted by it. I was actually in denial. The first thing I said when my wife told me that he got fired, I was like, verify that. What source are you looking at? Is that just some clowns on the internet starting stuff? Because I was kind of in denial. There's no way they would fire McDermott. Bean, I guess, you might argue his picks haven't been the best. So fire Bean, right? So I'm thinking about all that. But it was true. The Bills fire head coach McDermott. And I got to tell you, I agree with Steven here. He was like, I don't like it at all. And I didn't like it at all. And I still don't love it. So I'm in denial. I literally start going through the stages of grief. I'm in denial. This can't be happening. And then I'm angry. And I think I wasn't alone. People all over the place were so angry about this. And then I see the bargaining, which is the third step. I think that's our petition you see out there, where people are running a petition to make, somehow they think they can run a petition and make the Bills take them back. That's not going to happen. It would never happen. But that's a bargaining. We can negotiate. We can change this. And you can't. It's done. And then maybe a little depression sets in, step 4. For me, right, being a little bit older, having been there for the 4 Super Bowls, and then going through what I would probably term the dark ages as a Bills fan of just not being relevant for 17 years, right? And I think that's the fear and the depression to me is we cannot go backwards. We cannot go back to coach after coach after coach and player after player, and those were dark times. And I was really, really just feeling that depression. But then I started to actually move into step 5, which is acceptance. Because I realized ain't nothing going to change it. It's a done deal. But I was, doing my doom scrolling on all the social web stuff and internets and all that good stuff. And I came across a very interesting thing. See, John Harbaugh of the Ravens got fired. And I thought McDermott's is very similar. These are very good teams that have had good records in the past years. And Harbaugh said that Andy Reid of the Chiefs reached out to him and said, change can be good. And I thought that's an encouraging message, and it started to help me flip around with all my emotions with this. Yes, I admit I have a problem. I'm way too emotionally involved with the Buffalo Bills, but I'm not alone. I know I'm not. And I was thinking about that, and then I thought about Andy Reid's past. He was speaking from experience, something he'd been through. Andy was a coach for the Philadelphia Eagles a zillion years, over a decade, and he got fired. And he did a great job when he was there. He ends up going to the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, I'm not a Chiefs fan, but he goes to the Chiefs. They win 3 Super Bowls. For Andy, he experienced a very, very painful situation that he didn't want. He didn't want to leave Philly, but it happened. He couldn't control it. But then in hindsight, he realized it was good. It gave him a new perspective, and it really helped him out. So no, I'm not going to talk about football all morning. I'm going to relate this to life and life that actually matters to us everyday people. So let's talk about change, because the truth is we resist change. We really do. Change is one of God's primary tools for growth, trust, and renewal. Sometimes God changes our situation not because he is finished with us, but because he's not finished with us. Change can be so important for growth. We can't ignore this. Take a look at some scriptures here with me. First of all, God uses change to bring growth. He does. Isaiah said this in chapter 43, "Forget the former things. Do not dwell on the past. See, I am doing a new thing." Philippians, "He who began a good work in you will carry it on to completion." It's all forward. 2 Corinthians, "And we all are being transformed into his image with ever increasing glory." The Bible has all kinds of language in it and admonitions in it for us to keep moving forward. It's okay to understand the past. It's smart to recognize it, appreciate it for what it was, but you can't get stuck there. And sometimes change comes on us, right? We could be fired from a job. We could have a relationship breakup that we did not want to break up. We could maybe even go through something awful like the death of a loved one. You know, some very traumatic and incredible difficulties can come our way that are out of our control, right? Completely out of our control. And here we are. And what are we going to do with it? You know, and God likes to redeem things. And here's a hard truth. God requires change. He loves us too much to leave us the way we are. He loves us as we are. There's no conditions on his love, but that love's so strong and so powerful that he loves us too much to leave us in the condition that we're at. And so God is not committed to keeping us comfortable. He's committed to making us whole. And what does that look like? He is committed to us becoming more like his son, Jesus. And that's a process. And it's not always easy, and sometimes it's very painful. Very painful. So moving on, my next point is this. God is present and faithful in seasons of change. You don't do this alone. He doesn't abandon us. He doesn't allow something like that to happen and then scoots and sits back and sees how we deal with it. Not at all. He's right there with us. That's one of his big promises. Deuteronomy said, "The Lord himself goes before you and will be with you. He'll never leave you nor forsake you." Psalm 23, even though, it's a famous one, we know this one, "Even though I walk through the valley or the darkest valley, I will fear no evil." Why? Because you are with me. Hebrews 13:8, this is a keystone scripture for Foursquare, and that is Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever. Speaking to, he's always going to be there. He's not going to abandon us. So what's the hard truth we need to understand here? God anchors us in change. Change may shake our surroundings, but it's not going to ever shake God's presence. Now, some of you, I'm sure, have gone through these types of things. They can be life-altering. I've been through it in my life so many times. I think of the time when I was living down near Philadelphia in the Valley Forge area. I had graduated Bible school, and I was in a band that was, and a big music guy, and I was in a band that was getting a lot of attention by some labels back then, and we were getting some success. We were traveling. And it was really a unique situation we were in, and I was pretty excited about it. That was my goal back then. And then Julie and I ran into a situation where we had to make a huge decision. Do we stay in the area and pursue that, or do we move back up to New York and get a fresh start? And it became obvious to me that during that time that I needed to move back to New York, and it was time for a new chapter. But it wasn't easy. It was a change. I'd spent the last 5 years down there working my tail off to get a record deal and be able to do the music thing, and it didn't happen. And those guys went on. They were successful, and great things happened, but I was not involved in that anymore. I had to leave. And we came up here, and guess what? Coming up here, I did not know what I was going to do. Guess where God led me, and guess where he took me in that change? Here. Literally, January 1996, God brought me here. And it was incredible. And he still had my heart. When I came here, there was a recording studio, and they were looking to start a youth group. And I would have never dreamed to leave that situation down there that seemed so ideal to me, leaving that and happen to come to something new and unknown. And then here God blessed me with my heart's desire. Had I stuck to my guns, I would have missed out on a big part of what God's will for my life is and the blessing he had in store for me. It was huge. But I did it. And Julie did it. And we moved our family back up, and then this happened. And we became here, and it was incredible, and has been incredible. Here's the part that's so tricky in this. Letting go is often the path to God's best. The problem is we don't like to let go. Luke, Jesus said this, and recorded by Luke, "No one who puts a hand to the plow and looks back is fit for service in the kingdom of God." What is he talking about there? He's not just talking about farming. He's giving you an idea. And the look back he's talking about is, if you look back, you can't be going forward straight and doing, good rows that you need to be doing. And he's using that for a metaphor, an analogy, to understanding that life moves forward. Progress is forward. And if we get stuck in the past, we're going to have issues moving forward in a good way. If we hold on to the past, we'll never go forward. And we won't. And as much as I'm kind of having fun with the Bills thing, that's the same thing with Sean McDermott, right? And what he did with the Bills. For 9 years, he brought us out of the dark ages. He made us relevant. He made the Bills contenders every single year. But the other side of it, if you would be objective, the other side is, it became kind of a stuck area for the organization. Their goal is the Super Bowl, whatever, that's the goal, right? And I think from Pegula's point of view, where he was at is to say, now he didn't do a great job in his press conference. It was awful. I wish I could have met with him and prepped him. I think we could have had a better job at that. But in all that, the idea is that, hey, what we're doing isn't working. We're stuck here. It's stagnant. It's great, but it's not the goal. And so often, to get to the goal when you're stuck, it requires change. Sometimes dramatic change like this. And who knows what the future will be. He even said it. He could be wrong, but he knew something had to change in his estimation. And so often in our lives, it's the same thing. And that's what Jesus is saying. You can't just keep holding on to the past. If you want to advance in the kingdom of what God has for you and his best for you, you got to let go. John 12:24. "Unless a kernel of wheat falls to the ground and dies, it remains only a single seed." All right, now we're talking about farming again. What's going on there? Well, the idea, I think, in what he's talking about is obvious, but there's a death that happens that has to happen to move forward sometimes, right? Not a physical death, but a proverbial death, right? For me, leaving the Valley Forge area, it was a death of a dream. It was a death of an era. It was hey, life's going to move forward, and it's no longer going to look like this. And it may not include what I thought was my dream of, making it in the music world. It might not include that, but I had to surrender that. I had to let that die in order to move forward into what God really had for me. And so at the time, it was the hardest. Now, I look back on it now, it's easy. But at the time, It was the hardest decision up to that point I had ever made. Right? I was so fearful that I was walking away from my dream voluntarily. But the truth was, it was the best path, and I had to let go to advance. Philippians 3:13, brothers and sisters, forgetting what is behind and straining toward what is ahead. We always have to be moving forward. It is about moving forward. This whole Christian life really is more of a journey than it is a destination. I'm telling people that all the time. So often we treat Christianity like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, right? Do you remember that movie? I love the older one, of course. But, when he gets that golden ticket out of the chocolate bar, and he's like, I got the ticket. I'm in. And so often I think we approach Christianity like that. The golden ticket. I'm in. I got my ticket. I got my ticket to heaven. And when we approach it that way, we are missing out. We're missing out. Because it's about now. It's not a future engagement. It's a now engagement, and it's a process. It's a journey. I always speak of it as it being a spiritual journey, because it is. The destination, yeah, that's there. But even when we get there, it doesn't end. We don't end up in heaven sitting on a cloud, plucking a harp, and looking at little bears floating by selling toilet paper. That's not what's going to happen in heaven. We get to heaven, it's going to be the next leg of the journey. It's going to continue. And I can't wait for that, but let's not skip now. Now it's a journey. And journeys require you to move forward and move forward. And yeah, you might stumble, you might fall down, but you get back up and you keep moving forward. And if you get stuck looking at the past and reaching for the past and thinking, that's where it's at, and we got to go back, then you're stuck. And we don't want to be stuck. We want to move forward. So the hard truth is, letting go is not failure. It actually takes faith, because faith is what's required to overcome fear. And so leaving Valley Forge for me, I had a fear of giving up my dream, but I had faith that I was doing the right thing and following God. And so I just put it in God's hands and trusted that, and God blessed me beyond anything I could have thought of back then. So what no longer fits must be released. Holding on to the old can prevent us from stepping into the new. Let me ask you this. What are you hanging on to? What is it right now? What change has been presented to you and you're fighting it? You're resisting it. You're not accepting it, you don't step into it, and you're holding on and refusing to let go. What's going on in your life right now? Because I'm telling you, God's reaching out to you, and he's asking you to do one thing. Trust him. Once you trust him, you let go. And you understand he's got the best pathway forward. But it takes risk to trust. But I'll tell you, once you've walked with God long enough, you start to realize it's not that much risk, because he's always got your best interests in mind. He's always got your best interest in mind. But you got to trust that. You got to trust him like the good father he is, and that he knows better. So often we get hung up thinking that we know what's best. That we know what's best, right? And some of us are doing that with the Bills right now, right? We're saying we know what's best. The best thing for the Bills right now is to keep Sean McDermott right there. Maybe. How about this? Just how about this? And I'll tell you, before you get all mad at me and throw stuff at the TV or whatever you're doing, I was not in favor of firing McDermott, right? I was really struggling with who do they replace him with. But either way, maybe, just maybe, it's what they need to get to the next level, to get to where they're trying to go. But more importantly, where is God trying to get you? And we can sit and we can kick and we can cry and we can start petitions and we can go on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter or X or whatever, and we can rant and rave, and I've done my share of it, and we can have the water cooler conversations over and over and over again, right? We can do all that, but at some point, we got to let go and understand change is inevitable, and change is not always bad. Sometimes change is a good thing. Sometimes we need to embrace that change. We need to trust God's process. God changes us to grow us. God stays with us through that change. You're not abandoned. And God calls us to let go so that we can move forward. But it takes action on our part. God never fails his part, but he is patient with us, right? He's very patient with us. He's patient with me, waiting for us to kind of come to our senses and understand that his way is best. And God has your best interests in mind. So he'll capitalize on situations. He doesn't cause every situation. He doesn't. We live in a broken world where really terrible, awful, broken things happen. That's not God's doing. It's not. But God will capitalize on those things to grow us because God always is in it for the long game. And obviously he knows the long game, the full picture. And so he can take difficult and hard things and things that the enemy meant for evil, and he can turn those things to good. And in that process, he's going to grow us and allow us to go through those trials and different things that happen. He's going to take that and redeem it. And hopefully the outcome of that is that we become stronger, more mature Christians who are able to withstand more of the pressures of this broken world and not be shaken so easily. He's with us when this happens. And so I don't want you to forget that sometimes change is hard. Matter of fact, most of the time change is hard. The only people I find that like change are the people that it's their idea to change. They tend to be the people that like change. Everybody else have some form of resistance. It's actually kind of normal, right? Because it threatens things. It threatens routines. It threatens what we know. And I think the biggest thing about change sometimes that causes that defensive reaction, it's the unknown. If we're honest, we're a little bit fearful of the unknown. Is this going to be harder? Is this going to be more difficult? Is this going to cost me? Is this going to hurt me? Is this not going to be better? Is this going to put me in a worse situation? All these unknowns go flying through our minds, and we're comfortable with what we know because we already know how to handle it and deal with it. And so it's natural to put our defenses up and resist change, and that's okay, but we got to make a decision ultimately. Are we going to continue to resist, or are we going to embrace? All right, because the truth is, sometimes change is holy. What do I mean by that? Sometimes it's God ordained. And it's a moment where God's going to do something incredible in your life. Incredible. And bless you in ways and bring you to a place that you never thought you would be in. I've had that experience so many times in my life where God has done things I would have never imagined. But it always took trusting and having faith and stepping forward. It always took that. I've had that happen in my career, different jobs I've had. I've had that in locations. I've had that in different events here at the church. Over the last 23 years of serving here as a senior pastor, I've had all kinds of situations occur where things changed. Things today in this church are not like they were in 1996 or 2002 or 2010 or 15 18, so on and so forth. It's a natural to progress, to change, to move toward what God has for us. And it's a mistake to get caught into the old way of doing things and hold on because really it's holding you back. And so the truth is, if you learn to look at it with different eyes, change can be good because, you see, I had to go through that with the Silly Bills thing this week. I had to go through that. I was totally emotionally invested in this. I couldn't believe it started with the refs screwing up that call, and I shut the TV off, and I was like, I can't stand it when a game is decided by referees. I hate that. And I've coached for years and years and years and years, and any of the players who have played for me will attest to this. I'm actually not a ref complainer. I generally don't yell at refs. I don't challenge them. I don't bark at referees. I spend most of my time focusing my energy on what we can control as a coach, as the players, and I've coached them to do that, not to worry about it. Don't leave the game in the ref's hands. And that's a part of where I could say, I think that's what Josh meant when he took the blame for losing. He was like, I messed up. I turned the ball over. I didn't do enough, right? And he's right. And he's right to take ownership for that because it's the truth. But sometimes you just get wronged. And I don't care what everybody says. That changed the trajectory of that game, and it was the wrong call. And so whatever. So I start with that. And then McDermott getting fired after that, right? It threw me all over the place. And this is just football. This is just football. It's not real life for us, but it's, And I think about situations where real life happens, where you might have gotten fired or let go or the company downsized, right? And you've lost your job. And what are you going to do? Or you've been married for years and years and years, and all of a sudden your spouse says I'm out or cheats on you or whatever might happen, and all of a sudden we're not going to be married anymore. Or, a fiance or a boyfriend, girlfriend, and you thought you had this whole vision of what the future was going to be, and all of a sudden it breaks off, and you're standing here going, what happened? Or it could be the worst thing I can think of is the death of a loved one that happens for whatever myriad of reasons, but it happened. And what are we going to do with that, right? And so there's all kinds of pressures that we face. And once we kind of understand that we can't change it, we need to decide what we're going to do. And are we going to go kicking and screaming and dig our heels in and refuse? Or are we going to look at this in a different light? Because Andy Reid was right. The only thing that changed for Andy was his perspective. You see, the situation never changed. It didn't change at all. But his perspective changed in hindsight. But he looked back on it and went, geez, I would have never guessed that in the moment. Getting fired was awesome and put me on a path to leading the Chiefs to 3 Super Bowls. Incredible, very difficult to do. Very, very, very few teams in that category. And he's gone on to have an amazing career, so he can look back and go, sometimes change is good, and that's why he was a stand-up guy, and he shared that message with Harbaugh, and I'm sure he shared that message with McDermott. And McDermott will be just fine. The guy of that caliber and that quality and that character, he'll land on his feet. He'll do just great. I just hope it's in the NFC and away from us. But forget football. What about your life? What about your life? What's going on right now that you're struggling with? What change is happening that you can't stop and you're freaking out about it? Because I want to encourage you. God will use that change to grow you. He'll be with you through it. And you've got to let go so that he can get you to the path of what's best for you. You got to trust him. Sometimes change is good. Let me pray for you guys. Father, it's so hard sometimes to deal with change, especially change that we didn't initiate and or want. But Lord, you are just amazing at redeeming things and taking things that are hard and difficult and turning them into blessings that we could have never imagined. So Father, I pray for those who are going through very, very difficult times right now, facing change that's just disruptive to their lives. But I pray for a perspective change, that they would begin to take a different perspective and try to look at things from a higher level view and look at the long game, not the short game, and realize that sometimes those difficult changes are exactly what's needed to move into the blessing of the future that you have for them. Father, I pray that you will bless everyone watching today, those hanging out, Lord. Be with them, and in your precious name we pray. Amen.